Hi, having talked about some categories of information covered by individuals, let's now talk about some used by organisations. So companies or groups of people that do a related thing. So let's start by talking about knowledge management and creation as a category. This is a very big category. So essentially any system which is there to organise information across an organisation would be under this category, and also any that allow new information to be collected would again be under the more creation aspect of this category. So this will include things like the databases a company might hold. You might have several databases that hold various customer data. And also maybe to create that data, you might have some forms, you might have a website, that could be covered under this category as well. Another category might be marketing. So marketing is all about the advertisement and promotion of the goods and services an organisation may have. So, the advertising campaigns it might have, maybe on social media, this would fall under this category. A lot of data can be received from advertising campaigns online in particular. You can see this picture is quite an old one of a Google campaign. You can see it gives you graphs and all sorts of stats on how successful your campaign is going. MISs come up in a few areas of this course. MIS stands for Management Information System, and to be honest, this covers really every other category because the whole job of an MIS is to collect, analyse, store and present data. So they do it all really. The whole point is they integrate several business functions in one place. So they combine lots of similar but different aspects used on something like a website or an app, and you might use that, for example, so that you've got this central system that all employees can log into and see the data, see the reports, collect the data, for example. So schools will have an MIS. You might know it as Bromcom or SIMS or something like that. It's where things like registers are taken. It's where your assessment data is stored. Teachers can log in to this MIS and see this from anywhere. So these are very convenient, but if the MIS goes down or it gets hacked, that would be really quite serious because it contains lots of different aspects, lots of important items. For some more categories then, and we have got to try and memorise these names, I'm afraid. So financial analysis and modelling is all about looking for patterns within the information you currently hold, and also the modelling is more about making predictions for the future. So trying to use the data you have to look at what could happen in the future, which would then be important for things like marketing. If you know a certain product hasn't sold very well, you might do some analysis and try and sell it better in the future. So a common example of how especially companies will use this is by analysing sales figures to look for trends and to evaluate the progress of different products. A trend is just a pattern, right? Over time, so you're looking, does it look like something's going to happen in the future? Does it look like this pattern is going to continue or not? And a common next step from doing some analysis, doing some modelling, is to make some decisions. So this can be seen as a separate category of information. So the information being used to make decisions. This might manifest itself in lots of meetings, maybe at the board level of a big company, to discuss things like the analysis, to discuss things like the modelling. So using data to make decisions is what this is. Another category is contact management. This is about the systems that hold and retrieve contact details. So if you've got staff, if you've got customers, there'll be some contact details held for them, maybe phone numbers, maybe addresses, maybe email addresses, and this is the system used to manage this. So this will have features like a search system. It might have also sorting facilities, which if you were, say, an optician or a dentist, you might have an ability to retrieve the details for the next day's appointments using the system. You might want to call home just to confirm that someone has got an appointment for the next day, and you might use your contact management system for this. And the actual way you might contact the individual, maybe a phone call, maybe a text message, maybe an email, might be handled by your communication systems, which can be both internal and external. So these are methods used to send messages to staff, which would be internal communication, so inside your organisation, and also potentially other stakeholders, which might all be outside of your organisation, which is external. A stakeholder is anybody who's interested in your organisation. So customers, members of the public, governments, etc. So this could be things like email, could be things like phone calls, but also maybe fairly modern IT technology of using internal instant messaging via things like Teams or Slack, where you can just message your colleagues very quickly using your internal system. And the final category, which I've given its own slide because it is quite important, is big data. Big data is, I think it's quite a silly term, but it is data which is so large or complicated that traditional data processing software cannot deal with it. So it's so huge, maybe we're talking about thousands of petabytes, or it's so complicated, it's in such a difficult format to analyze that you cannot just analyze it like you could in most other data. And there are more and more data sets which are classed as big data as companies get big and as more and more personal data gets collected. An example of this might be all of the sales data for a big supermarket under a popular loyalty scheme. So I'm thinking Tesco, I'm thinking club cards, where I think about 70% of Tesco customers have a club card. That produces a huge amount of data, and I imagine that's very hard for Tesco to analyze. So any very large volume of data is hard to analyze. Something like the exam results from one college is not really big data, but the exam results for the entire country over 10 years is big data. So there isn't an exact line, but if it is too big to analyze quickly or normally, it would be big data. So the kind of drawback is this takes a lot longer and it's harder to analyze, but because it's giving you much more data over a wider area or a wider period of time, it may well provide more detailed patterns or trends. It may well lead to better modeling, better predictions for the future, but of course, you've got to go through the analysis step, which is more tricky.